So for the 33rd class, we learned about the Monroe Doctrine. So if you're watching this because you were absent, let me try to make it as simple as I can. The Monroe Doctrine was a really big decision as America was growing up. Okay, which brings me to my first analogy. Countries are like people. And even though I'm much older than you, you and I share something in common. Different roles, different expectations at different stages of life. So me checking in, me as a little kid at 7, playing some football at 14, graduating MSU at 21, being a single guy, living with roommates with my dog at 28, getting married, settling into my teaching job and raising my kids. And here's the most recent photo of me from yesterday, almost 48 years old. And my point is that logically, all of these photos are me, but we're different at every stage of life. Okay, if you get that. The expectations for me here, a lot different than here, if you follow me. So let's use this analogy with countries. Okay, America. So America had an infancy. We had an early childhood. We had some tumultuous teenage years. And eventually we grew to adulthood, being, a fully actualized adult. Okay, so countries go through the same process as people. But I think it's safe to say there are pivotal moments in your childhood that will steer your direction for the rest of your life. That applies personally, it applies to nations, which brings me to the history side of it. The Monroe Doctrine of 1823. Give a little perspective. At this time, America was 47 years old. As of the making of this presentation, that's 19% of our history. So in other words, if America were to live to the age of 100, I'm feeling optimistic today, that would make us 19 years old. And like you at 19, legally you're an adult. However, you're still trying to find your way in the world, most likely at 19. Monroe Doctrine is no exception, okay? So the question, or the comment I should say, is this was an important decision, okay? And here's why it was an important decision. It declared that American continents were henceforth not to be considered as subjects for future colonization by any European powers. Let me simplify this for you. America's sitting here and saying, hey, Europe, leave us alone. And in return, we will leave you alone. Bearing in mind, we just repelled Britain a second time in the War of 1812. So we were letting we're putting them on notice to say, hey, we're here, we're doing our own thing, do not mess with us, and we won't mess with you. And for the record, it was actually written by John Quincy Adams, the Secretary of State, son of John Adams and our future president. However, the idea behind it was from Monroe, but John Quincy Adams actually wrote that. Anyway, moving on. So let's take a step back. What were the things that led up to the Monroe Doctrine? Okay. Now, the first thing is this idea of nationalism, this idea that I am an American, I am proud to be an American, I identify as an American. And you can look at the War of 1812 as one of the big reasons why nationalism was high at this point. And people were loyal, they were devoted to America, and people were feeling pretty good. They really were. Life was pretty good to say, hey, we're here, we're growing, we're strong. Okay, so this is our starting point, this idea of, hey, America is a great country, I'm proud to be an American, I'm going to fight to be an American. Okay. Now, another thing behind the Monroe Doctrine is this philosophy. It's a philosophical idea called manifest destiny. And it's the idea that God gave the North American continent to the Americans and wanted them to expand their boundaries west to the Pacific Ocean. Now, such beliefs were greatly amplified by Lewis and Clark. When Lewis and Clark returned, there was a lot of positive feelings like, wow, look at this big, beautiful land we have. We can fill it up and make it our own. And this went all the way to Oregon and California. And if you ever heard the song, from sea to shining sea. And quite honestly, they didn't really care who was there in the way. This land belonged to Americans, which you can guess would be a problem for American Indians and Mexicans. Anyway, that's for another day. Okay, but that's idea. So we have nationalism combined with manifest destiny, and you can see this spreading happen. So this Louisiana purchase became the Missouri Territory, the Michigan Territory, and you have this really important, the Adams-Onis Treaty, which is showing this dividing line. So Spain is fading out of the story, okay? In 1818, General Andrew Jackson, who went on to be our president, led troops into Florida, destroyed Indian villages, seized Spanish settlements, and removed the Spanish governor from power. And it resulted in this Adams-Onis Treaty, And Spain gave all of Florida to the U.S. and transferred ownership of the Oregon Territory. We keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and removing more European powers. Okay, so we have some problems as well. We have some concerns. So Americans at the time were looking at Latin America and saying, oh boy, look at all these brand new independent countries. Okay, but European monarchies plan to help Spain and Portugal get them back. So U.S. leaders are saying, oh shoot, this would be a problem. This would be a problem because it's much easier to just trade with these independent countries than dealing with these European monarchies. Okay. And America had to think about money and safety, much like you're going to have to when you're 19 years old. Okay, where are you living? Is it safe? How are you paying your bills? This kind of thing. So in 1809, Spanish colonies in Latin America began to declare independence. Great Britain, Austria, Prussia, and Russia formed the Quadruple Alliance. It was an attempt to suppress movements for independence from monarchies in Europe. Now, this alliance eventually went on without the support of Great Britain and promised to help Spain regain its territories. Britain didn't want that because they didn't want Spain to be powerful. Britain wanted to be powerful. So you have Britain and America who weren't real happy. So Britain tried to create this joint working together with America, and America said, heck with that. We are going to fly solo here. We're staying out of this nonsense, and this is part of the Monroe Doctrine. And the moral of the story, there's a time to work together and a time to do your own thing. I think it's safe to say this was a situation where it was correct to do our own thing. That's an opinion. You feel free to disagree with that opinion. How AP is that, right? Okay, we also have concerns about Russia, because you can see Russia doing its thing here in Alaska and heading into the western part of the country. And there's a Russian outpost 50 miles from San Francisco. So America's concerned. We wanted to get these people out. We wanted to do our own thing. And the analogy from people are like countries. When you're 19 years old, there might be people from your childhood are trying to hang on and trying to threaten your independence, and you have to say, no, I got to do my own thing. You got to stay away. I'm figuring it out. I'm figuring out how to live on my own. Get out of my way. And that's the vibe what was going on historically. It's probably going to be the vibe personally in a couple years for you. So what was the importance of the Monroe Doctrine? This was a very bold act that marked the beginning of a long period of American policy preventing other powers from interfering in Latin American political affairs. It established the direction of U.S. foreign policy for decades, until 1898, actually. It established America as a world power. I am not a kid anymore. I am a grown adult like you. Don't treat me like a kid anymore, okay? It warned European nations, don't think about trying to put a colony here in America. We're doing our own thing. You want to fiddle with the rest of the world? Fine. Do not fiddle with us. Don't mess with us. These actions would be considered dangerous to our peace and safety. That's euphemistic language to say, hey, don't mess with us. We won't mess with you. And it promised the U.S. would stay out of their affairs. And it worked. And this policy lasted until the Spanish-American War of 1898. So what that allowed us to do is grow and reach that dream of manifest destiny to be from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. In this political cartoon, here's America doing its thing in the Western Hemisphere. Hey, European powers, you do your thing over in this neck of the woods, okay? And you can see Uncle Sam saying, hey, this is us. Hands off. Leave us be. Don't fiddle with us. We won't mess with you. That kind of thing, okay? So one last mention of this initial analogy. So once America shifted from isolationism, meaning leave us alone, to interventionism, to getting involved, we were around for 122 years. So think about it like this. So once we started getting involved with world affairs, interventionism, we were 49 at that point, certainly not a kid. It's about the same age I am. I am a grown man. I have gone through all the childhood stuff. I am grown. And America was grown. We went through our childhood stuff too. Now, since then, since 1898, we have been involved in world affairs, militarily, economically, geopolitically, and culturally. When I've traveled internationally, it's amazing how much Coca-Cola is around, and Budweiser beer, and these very American McDonald's and KFC. These very American corporations are all over the world. So that's the cultural side of it. So anyway, America is a strong nation and has been a strong nation for some time. Now the question, the assignment is, would we be in the same position we are in today without the Monroe Doctrine? So for those who are absent on Google Classroom, I want you to take notes on this PowerPoint and answer this question in red and turn it in to me, and that is the assignment. So to wrap up, the Monroe Doctrine huge decision, and I would argue a correct decision, because it allowed us to grow and focus on ourselves. And by the time we were quote unquote grown in 1898, we could do our thing because we had that time to figure out our own identity, work through our own issues, and become a major player. And we have been a major player for a long, long time, and I hope we continue to be. But we shall see, right? Okay, so thank you for watching.